Hey everybody, it's me Amanda with Once in a Wild and welcome to Once in a Wild Wednesday. If this is your first time watching our program, welcome and we are happy to have you. If you are a friend, family, and follower, then welcome back of course, and we're so very happy to see you here. Hello to Viviana already chiming in, and thank you so very much. We're especially glad to see any of our followers today. Because of what's going on here in Texas, which is where we are. So Once in a Wild is actually a mobile zoo. If you are unfamiliar with us, welcome. A little bit about us is we are in Texas right now. And if you have been watching any of the news, you'll know that Texas is experiencing a very, very severe winter storm right now. Well, we did have a winter storm blow through, and unfortunately, a lot of consequences from that storm. So that's what we're here to talk about today. We thought we would go ahead and broadcast anyway, even if we don't have a whole lot of people watching live, because I think it would be maybe something positive for people to watch if you can watch, maybe on your mobile device or anything at all, laptop. We're hoping that each and every one of you is safe and sound and staying as warm as possible, but we know a lot of you are not able to be warm right now. So we do definitely hope that we'll get better. And without further ado, let's go ahead and begin our show, shall we? So I don't want to be too much of a downer today, but we do know the seriousness of the situation at hand here in Texas, where we are actually located. Once in a Wild is a mobile zoo, which services the San Antonio area and surrounding cities, of course, as long as we can drive there within reason. We can bring the zoo to you, to your classroom, to your birthday party, to nursing homes, to all sorts of situations where animals would make your day better or your event better. We can do all-day events or one-hour events. And we can also bring you virtual programs, just like you're seeing right now. This is our Once in a Wild Wednesday live stream that we offer for free every single Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, since we're here in Texas, in Central Texas, that is. I learned not too long ago that Texas actually has a couple of different time zones because we're so large. But we do bring the zoo to you virtually as well via the live stream, which is absolutely free of charge. But if you would like to donate to our little zoo here, there are a few ways you can do so. Number one is by booking your own program. So you can actually schedule and book your own personal live stream, well, not live stream, but virtual program with the animals of your choosing. They're great for classrooms especially, but also for birthday parties and just for the fun of it, of course, with the animals that you would like to see. We have over 70 animal ambassadors here at Once in a Wild. We have invertebrates. We have all kinds of reptiles and amphibians, and we also have mammals and birds. So a little bit of something for everybody. And that is the best way to help us out, is by booking your own encounter, whether it be in person right here in Texas, once the weather calms down a little bit, and maybe when COVID calms down a little bit. What a year or a couple of years we're having. Oh my goodness, what a crazy time. But we can bring the zoo to you here in person. Again, that's the best way to help us out, is by booking your own program in person or virtually. Of course, we can service the entire world as long as the power's on, and as long as you have internet access, we can go ahead and schedule your Zoom room animal encounter. Those are a lot of fun. Another way to help us out is by donating an amount of your choice via Venmo, Cash App, and also PayPal as well. All those handles are Once in a Wild. Cash App is a little bit of a strange one. It's $ Once in a Wild, but that's just how Cash App operates, of course, for everybody. And then we also have an Amazon wish list on our website, which is down below, onceinawilds.com. There's also links to all of those options as well if you feel like donating to our little zoo here at Once in a Wild. That helps us out quite a bit, especially this year, of course, as everybody else. But let's go ahead and talk about what's going on right now. So we thought about maybe not doing the show today, but then we took a second to think about it and we thought, well, it might be something positive for people to watch. Let's see who's chiming in so far. Hello, looking good. I'm glad the signal's looking good despite the situation. So if you're not familiar, or maybe you're from somewhere outside of the United States, or you're from somewhere outside of Texas, Texas is experiencing pretty much a blackout situation with a lot of homes around Texas. The weather here has been so severe that it has basically caused a lot of the power to go out and heat to go out and water to turn off and things like that. So luckily here at Once in a Wild, we have not experienced that. And we're very, very, very fortunate to have that luxury, if you will, of our heat not turning off, our power not turning off. As you can see, the internet works too. So I don't know why, but we are extremely grateful to have all those things that we take for granted each and every day, right? But in cases like this, where the weather has dropped below freezing and we had some of the coldest days of our entire existence here in Texas, Texas does not usually get this cold, especially South Texas. We're from San Antonio. But long story short, we had such a severe storm with a bunch of snow the other day that basically all of those things could not handle that cold of weather. So I'm sure you guys know about that already, especially if you're in Texas or at least in the United States. It's all over the news. It's not great. Let me know if you're safe. I know some of you are that I've already talked to already, and I imagine some of you won't be able to talk to me right now because you probably don't have power or internet. But I hope that your power comes back on soon. I hope that you're staying warm some way. You're able to go somewhere to stay safe. And I hope your animals are staying safe as well. Those of you that have animals at home, you know the special challenge that we have, especially when you have over 70 animal ambassadors to take care of. And if the power goes out in that situation, it's a little bit of a very, well, not a little bit, it's a very extremely scary situation because we have to not only take care of us, humans, we have to take care of all of our animals. And not every animal is as well equipped to deal with cold weather or even, no water and things like that as other animals. Some animals are very resilient. The only animals we have outside right now are actually our ducks, and ducks are very cold weather resilient, believe it or not. Wood ducks as well as Pekin ducks, which are the two types of ducks that we have. Those guys can be found all over the United States, all over everywhere. And of course, places get a lot colder than they do here. Although we did make provisions for them, don't worry, they're doing just fine. They're actually totally fine. But we had to give them like hay and straw to bed down in. We had to make sure their water wasn't frozen over, or just not give them water periodically throughout the day when it was freezing outside. So there's a lot of things that you have to think about. Of course, they have somewhere to shelter in and be safe all the time anyway. But those are the only ones that can actually handle this type of weather. Some of the other animals that do okay if it gets a little bit colder are ferrets. The ferrets, Thor and Loki, are a European type species, so they can certainly handle a little bit of cold. We wouldn't make them stay outside, but we would, it would not be as concerned for them if the power went out and we didn't have any heat. We would definitely need to make sure we had water for them and everything else, of course, because water is also turning off. It's kind of a terrible situation, to be honest with you, and we're very grateful to not have to be in that situation. But we are preparing just in case. We're filling buckets of water. We filled one of our bathtubs full of water. We have a lot of extra water in our pantry just to make sure that we have drinking water, especially. And we also have, for our main animals that we're worried about, are going to be like the reptiles. So back to animals that can handle the cold. The ducks are fine. Like I said, we just have to make sure and give them a little bit extra shelter, a little bit extra straw and hay to bed down in, and be checking on them, of course, and making sure they have food and water. We were feeding them a little extra as well to make sure their fat content is up and they can just kind of endure the weather, but they're cold weather animals, so they're okay. The ferrets, like I said, can handle pretty chilly weather. The rabbit, Sandor, you guys know Sandor the giant rabbit. That's another animal that does perfectly well in cold weather. That's about it. Our axolotls are another one. Of course, they need water because they're an underwater amphibian. So if we ran out of water, that wouldn't be great. We would have to figure that out somehow and maybe use bottled water or something like that for them. Right now, they're okay. But they could handle very low temperatures. Some of our other amphibians too, like our fire belly toads that we have. And Jackson chameleons can actually handle in the 50s or maybe a little lower. So they're okay. But everybody else, we have to make sure and take care of if something happens. So if we happen to lose power here once in a while, we have a plan. So that is kind of what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to see what you guys thought as well, because this is very, very, very new to me. It's not new to me to have to take care of animals, of course. And it's not new to me to have to worry about disastrous weather, but it is new to me to live somewhere so cold that if the power goes out, what do you do? So we're having to kind of learn through research and through other people what they're doing and talking to all kinds of people. But what we've done so far is made sure to have plenty of water, like I said. We've also made sure that if the power goes off here and we have no heat, that we need to basically move all the reptiles into their travel enclosures and shelter in the car, where we would be able to turn on some heat until Friday when it gets warm again. So let's see what you guys have to say already, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some of the species that we brought today. All the species that I brought today would definitely need extra help if something happened due to this cold and crazy weather. Hello, Viviana. Nice to see you. She says, hello, Amanda and Ricky. Thank you so much for being here despite all this craziness. I'm so glad that you can be here. This weather is bonkers indeed. I've never experienced anything like this. I am from San Antonio, Texas. So to my knowledge, maybe since I was a baby in 1984, when I was a little baby, it did snow quite a bit as well. But I've personally never experienced snow that was this much and that stayed on the ground during the day and that stayed for a few days. That has never happened in my experience in San Antonio. I've seen it in Dallas, not nearly this bad. And when I was in Dallas, it didn't like black out or anything like that. So it was perfectly fine. We survived just fine, and we're still surviving today. It's amazing what you can face and how resilient you can be when you have to, right? Pretty crazy. All the things that we take for granted sometimes. Ricky says, looking good. Good. So you're in Big Bend. Viviana is a frequent watcher of our show, and she says, waiting for more snow, but I got water and power here in the Big Bend region of West Texas. I'm really glad that you have power and water. You're one of the lucky ones as well. Some people's power is being turned off and on, so it's kind of like a back and forth situation. To be very honest with you, if our power went off even for a little while, I would go ahead and move the reptiles to the warm vehicles that we have. Luckily, we have plenty of vehicles for them to fit in, so don't worry. We wouldn't let anything happen to them, but it is a little bit concerning, right? Donna has a very cold and shivery blue emoji face. Yes, that's how we all feel lately. It's been something else. It's really not anything that I've experienced before, not being from the north. But even people that are from up north and they've maybe moved here, I have a few friends that have done that. They're a little bit concerned this time too because of the power outages, which isn't very great. Yes, but we are prepared. We decided to go ahead and prepare everything. I mean, the last thing we need or want is for anything to happen to our animals or us. So, I mean, we have food stocked up. Luckily, all the animals' foods are stocked up in case we can't go anywhere for a couple of days. We're perfectly fine there. We have water saved up. Like I said, we still have running water, so we're okay. And we're trying to conserve all the things that we need to conserve. And like I said, we have plans in place if we have to move the animals for any reason. Your dachshund had a small flannel jacket for the cold days. Yep, one of our dogs wears a little sweater sometimes when it's cold. It's my mom's dog, Buddy. He does wear he's an older little dog, so he doesn't have much of a coat either. He's a short-haired dog, and he's older, so actually really, really old. He's a senior citizen, definitely. You enjoyed the video of which animals? The ducks? Yes, the ducks actually do quite well in snow. Did you know that ducks actually have a special ability in their feet that will cause their feet not to get too cold? So they're actually totally fine. We just have to make sure that they're okay out there and they have plenty of food and water when they need to drink water. Ducks have to have drinking water at all times when they're eating. Not at all times. So as long as they're eating, they have to have water too. So we have to make sure they have water that isn't frozen while they're being fed. Okay, Philip says, hello, Philip. He says, hello, currently in Houston. LOL indeed. We have a bit of snow, most melted. Yes, today it got a bit warmer for us as well. In fact, it wasn't that cold today at all. It got above freezing, thank goodness. And some of the snow has melted away. It's kind of icy out there and gross. And it's not great for driving here in Texas because there aren't many provisions on the roads. So that's another issue that we're having, is to get somewhere for supplies and things like that, or to get somewhere that's warm. That's where people are becoming trapped, unfortunately. Yes. Yeah, I know we're kind of getting a little bit heavy in our topics, but it's important to talk about this. And if you have pets at home, I do highly suggest that you have some kind of plan. And tomorrow is supposed to start snowing again. So it's going to be one more super cold day. And then we're hoping and crossing our fingers that it's going to be a lot better from Friday on. And then we're going to be out of the woods. We're hoping that the power comes back on though for people, because even if we're out of the woods with the weather, if we don't have power, that's not going to be great either, but we're hoping that it will. But to be prepared just in case, you want to make sure and have water. Some people are using snow to make water and be able to like flush their toilets and things like that. That's something you don't really think about until it doesn't happen for you, right? So the snow's melting, but we're getting more tomorrow. So if you have to collect some snow in a bucket or in pans or anything, and you have to melt it down to flush your toilets, that might be something that you have to do. There are all kinds of different methods to stay warmer. But if you have animals like reptiles, amphibians, and invertebrates, that is going to be a huge challenge for us people that keep those animals. And frankly, it's been one of our worst nightmares to have this happen. A lot of the fellow keepers that I know that have animals have cold-blooded animals, and those animals cannot handle temperatures that drop that low for longer periods of time at all. So they are having to box all their animals and move them somewhere warmer, or move them by the fireplace, or put them in the car, things like that. So it's quite scary. So it's always good to have a plan, whether it be for cold weather, for power outages, even if it's a mildly cold weather day and you just have, the power go out in your house. Maybe there's a storm or something like that, not even a winter storm, but like just a thunderstorm. What are you going to do? You should always have a plan. And then what if you have like a fire? You should always have at least a tentative plan. Now, I'm not telling you to stay in your house and take care of your animals. If there's a fire, you need to get out. You need to maybe try to put out the fire if it's a small fire and get out of there. That is not really something that I want to encourage you guys to do at home, is to stay in your house and try to save everything, because it's really not safe for you. You have to call for help right away. Try to put out the fire if it's just a small kitchen fire or something like that. Make sure you have smoke detectors in your house that will wake you up, and get out of there. That is almost, I would say, worse than what's going on right now, because there's not much time. With this, at least you do have time. With blackouts and cold weather and things like that, you can make provisions to have travel carriers for all of your animals, or maybe you just have dogs and you have like leashes ready to go. Everything you need to be able to get your animals out. If you have horses, you need to have plans for that in case of fire, in case of power outages, in case of super cold weather. Luckily, horses do pretty well in almost any weather within reason, but horses still need water to drink. So sometimes you have to break their ice to give them water. You have to make sure they have tons of water in the heat. Typically in South Texas, we're dealing with heat issues, not cold issues. So this is absolutely strange for us. So let's see. Yep. That was the last major snowfall in San Antonio in 85. I was not even a year old when that happened. I was born in 1984 in September. And so that next, I guess, January or February, I was just a little baby. I don't remember that at all. So yes, you are right. Yeah, so a lot of people are not working as well. That's another issue right now. We've had a lot of cancellations of meetings and, of course, schools and things like that. They're not attending. And we, of course, understand everybody's safety is extremely important, more important than attending a once in a while Zoom encounter, right? We want to make sure, or a meeting, we want to make sure that everybody's safe. And that's definitely our concern right now. You said Alpine, Texas has no water or power, so I have no work for the rest of the week. Yeah. And we're hoping that, who knows how long this is going to take to resolve. So for the water issue, I think it may take a little bit longer for some people. So maybe stocking up on water might be a good idea. What about people with pet birds? Well, it depends on what kind of birds you have. Obviously, we talked about the ducks. A lot of birds are very, very cold weather tolerant. Ducks are extremely easy to take care of in cold. There's lots of ways to do that. But if you have chickens do need heat, or you have to bring them inside in extreme cold. They cannot handle all of that. And then you have to, of course, think about your fire hazards with heat lamps and things like that. So if you have other pet birds, though, in your home and your power goes out in this extreme cold weather, say you have pet parrots or pet finches or doves, all kinds of pet bird options, right? They probably need to be moved somewhere warm once it gets too cold. So, they can probably handle into the 60s, 50s, but anything below that, you're going to have to make some kind of provisions, either with some kind of heater inside your house. You have to be very, very careful with birds, though, because heat emissions and emissions from space heaters and some things like that, even heaters in general, sometimes there are emissions from that, meaning chemicals that come into the air that can actually harm your birds and even kill your birds in an extreme case. Birds are very sensitive to the air that they breathe and that we breathe. So things in general, like hairsprays or scented candles, or all kinds of things, are very toxic to birds. So you want to be very, very careful with that. And if you have a new heater that you've never used before, you want to make sure that it doesn't have anything toxic, like, for example, Teflon. Teflon is found on a lot of cookware. So nonstick cookware is always very, very important to have your birds far away from that, or don't use that in your house, because anything that burns on there can actually go into the air. Fumes will arise, and that could harm your bird or even kill your bird. So that's also very important. So you definitely don't want to have any fire hazards as well, because fire is very deadly to a lot of animals, but smoke inhalation can really harm birds as well. But birds definitely can get cold too. So you can, if it does go out, you have no power, and it's still fairly okay. It's like in the 60s, 50s. You can probably cover them with blankets over their enclosures. That might help a little bit because they are warm-blooded, but anything beyond that, you're going to have some way to move them out of there or something. It's a scary situation for sure. And that's a really good question, Ricardo. Thank you for that. Yes, shout out to Buddy, Mr. Buddy wearing his sweater. Samantha gave Buddy his sweater. I don't know if she's able to watch right now due to power issues, but thank you very much for Samantha. So here's a good question, and let's go ahead and segue into the animals that we brought today. I've brought all cold-blooded animals, including reptiles, right? Man, did you all reptiles burrow in extreme cold weather? So not all of them, because not all of them experience extreme cold weather. But even animals such as like a bearded dragon over in Australia or a blue-tongue skink in Australia, those guys have to burmate sometimes. That's what we call the word for hibernating, if you will, in the reptile world or field. You would call it burmating, B-U-R-M, burmating, instead of hibernating. So they would kind of hunker down into the ground. Yep. And they would wait it out. Luckily, a feature of, or I guess a benefit of being cold-blooded is that you can kind of shut down for a while. You don't have to breathe as often. Your metabolism is very slow, so you don't have to eat as often or drink as often as other animals. So you can kind of hunker down. A bad thing about being cold-blooded is you can't really handle extreme temperatures, depending on the species. There are some species that can handle it. Like I said, axolotls can handle it just fine. They are cold weather animals anyway. A lot of fish are like that. It can handle very, very extremely cold weather, cold temperature. What else? A lot of frogs are like that as well. But most reptiles do have to have some kind of method to burrow underneath something, hide away, something like that during extreme cold weather. However, when it's record-breaking cold weather, I imagine that a lot of these reptiles are just not going to make it out here in the wild. And a lot of animals in general that normally would never have to see these kind of temperatures in South Texas. Unfortunately, we are expecting some animals to pass away. So that is very sad, but we are doing our best to stay positive today, right? And think of ways to kind of prevent this from happening in your own life. But it's just a fact of life that animals do have to survive in the wild or not, right? So let's meet our first animal that is cold-blooded. All of our animals today are cold-blooded. I figured I would bring a couple of them just to kind of talk about this a little bit. Oh my goodness. So when we talk about cold-blooded animals, that means that they don't have their own body temperature. The proper word for cold-blooded or term is ectothermic. That means they are not endothermic like us. Oh, I'm going to make sure we're in focus here, because our frog needs to be in focus. This is Frances the frog, and she has joined us today to talk about amphibians a little bit like that. Well, I'm going to talk about amphibians. She's not going to. But this is Frances the frog, and she is an African bullfrog. This species exists only in Africa, and they do not have to experience snow ever. So she definitely would not be equipped to handle this kind of weather. Definitely not outside, but nor inside if the temperatures dropped in here. This type of frog may be able to survive maybe down into the lower 60s or 50s, but that would be very uncomfortable for them. And if that does happen, she would probably start to shut down. So what they do in their environment is they actually have to deal with the dry season. So in Africa, where they're from, they experience the wet season and the dry season. They don't have any snow or winter time. They only have 2 seasons instead of 4 like we do in the United States. So they have the wet season, which rains a lot, right? There's a lot of rain. And they have the dry season where there's almost no rain. So during the dry season, as an amphibian, they have to make provisions for that. And this animal does burrow under the ground, rather. And they will actually make a slime bag out of their own snot. Gross. And they will kind of go to sleep in a little sleeping bag that they make out of their own snot. It's called a slime bag. Like literally, that's what it's called. And they cover their entire bodies with the slime bag. It's not an insult in the species or any species of frog. And they will kind of just go to sleep and shut down for a while. And that helps them to retain moisture that they need ever so much to stay moisturized and to be able to survive as an amphibian, because amphibians need to have moisture in order to survive. Now, there are some amphibians that live in the desert, for example, that don't need nearly as much, like desert toads and things like that, but most amphibians rely on a water source to keep them alive. So they have to basically kind of make their own water source underground. They cover themselves in that tight slime bag that they make, kind of like a little sleeping bag, go to sleep. And then once the rains come back, that's when they're going to wake up. They will actually eat their slime bag off of their own body and proceed to break out of it and everything, and then climb back out onto the surface of the land. And then they'll start looking for a pond, a river, or some kind of body of water, right, to start making their home. And that's when they start calling out to mates as well. So this type of frog, if they are male, they will come out and start singing, and a bullfrog singing voice is kind of like a burp. It's like every other bullfrog. If they are male, they sound like a roar, 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 like that. And if they are female, they kind of have a chirping voice. They have different voices, which is kind of neat. But as the male, they'll start singing, start establishing their territories. They will kick other males out of the territory, and they will bite each other with very sharp teeth they have on their bottom jaw. They have 3 sharp teeth that kind of stick out to be able to bite each other, and they will fight with their big bodies as well. These guys can actually be the size of a dinner plate. They're huge when they are full grown. And they will battle each other. They will sing to establish territories and to attract females. And once they mate, the female will lay the eggs, of course, in the water. And the male will fertilize them in the water externally. And then the mom actually will leave, and dad will stick around to take care of the babies. He actually will guard all of his little eggs and tadpoles, pollywogs, and when they become little frogs as well, until they're ready to get out of there and be their own teenager frog, I guess. And then he will kind of start the whole cycle over again, because then the dry season happens again. So it's just kind of like a never-ending circle of life, if you will. But these guys definitely aren't equipped to handle any kind of cold weather, especially down into below freezing temperatures and snow. They absolutely would not survive. They are not equipped to do that, nor evolved to do that. And they live in very, very warm climates in Africa, like I said before. These guys are found mostly in savannas and other areas like that, where there's a dry and a wet season, of course, in Africa. And they survive out there in nothing like this, nothing like lower temperature. So Francis indeed would be one that we would have to move into a warmer area if something did happen to our home. If we lost power, we would definitely need to move Francis. And another issue, like I said before, is water. So if we cannot get any running water or clean water for amphibians that we keep, we need to make sure and have extra water. And another thing about amphibians is they have very sensitive skin. Look how cute she is. They have very sensitive skin that actually absorbs toxins, unfortunately. So we would also have to make sure the water is either filtered water, reverse osmosis, that's hard to say, reverse osmosis or RO water. It can be bottled water, or it's water that's treated with special drops that we put in it called, they're blue drops. I can't remember what the name, Reptisafe is the brand, but it basically takes all the chlorine out of the water too. So all of that has to be thought about in a situation like this when you have amphibians, because they do need water to drink as well as to be misted with. And for example, like our axolotls, they can handle the cold temperatures just fine. They wouldn't do well if their water froze, obviously, but if their water's cold, that's perfectly fine. They actually don't do well in hot temperatures, so we have to keep them cool in the summer heat, and sometimes fall and spring heat. Here in South Texas, it gets hot a lot. But they need water, of course, to survive. That would be an extreme amphibian, if you will. It's a fully aquatic amphibian. And this type of amphibian is on land once they're adults. When they're babies, they're in water too. I'm so blurry right now. My camera's focused on her. It looks really cool though. But these guys, even though they're on land as an adult, they still need water and need to be misted and moisturized. So if we ran out of water, that wouldn't be good. So that's a couple of things we have to think about with some of our animals, right? And I think I've answered all your questions so far, and I'll just keep on talking because I know not everybody's able to watch right now because of power issues, and I super appreciate anybody that's watching today. Once again, this is Once in a Wild. If you've never been here before, welcome. Please take some time to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're rewatching this video on YouTube, or if you're watching on Facebook, make sure and follow us on Facebook. And if you haven't checked us out on our other social medias like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, all of the links are down below. They should be, and if not, they're found at onceinawild.com, and you can follow us and keep track of what's going on during this crazy winter time. Like I said, we're doing okay, and we're so very grateful to be doing all right now, because we know a lot of you guys and a lot of other zoos and a lot of other animal keepers in general, just people that have pets at home, they're not doing well. So that's why we're talking about this today, to make sure that you guys know that we understand. And we're super duper grateful that Once in a Wild, so far so good, is doing okay. We do have power. We have not had any power cutouts. I guess if this video cuts out in the middle of me talking, you'll know what happened. And we haven't lost internet or water either, which is amazing. So we're extremely grateful. I don't know why. And it doesn't seem fair, frankly, but we're doing our best to be very, very thankful for that. So that was Francis the frog. And again, that is something we have to think about with our cold-blooded friends like amphibians. So I'm going to set Francis down, because holding frogs for too long isn't really the best for them. We always make sure to rinse our hands with filtered water before handling any amphibians, because our hands can be very dirty and oily and can actually harm them. That is one kind of thing to keep in mind. If you see a frog or a toad in your backyard, please don't pick them up. You can actually harm them with the oils on your finger, and you can cause them to lose one of their weapons, which is the ability to pee on you. That is one of their weapons against their enemies and predators, right? So if they pee on you, they may not have enough urine to pee on the next predator. Not that you're a predator of the frog, I hope, but that can cause them to waste it on you. So that's a good kind of tip for frogs. So I'm going to set her down. She looks so cute. I love frogs. Frogs are extremely important to the natural environment. We're hoping that frogs outside in the wild survive all this crazy winter temperatures, right? It really makes me worry about them, though. But frogs are very, very important to the natural environment. They are indicator species. So since they are so sensitive to different toxins and changes in the environment, temperatures, fungus, all kinds of situations that can happen in the wild, excuse me, getting emotional. They're one of those animals that can actually tell us ahead of time that something's wrong with the environment, whether it be temperature change. We're definitely learning about all that, right? But it can also be too hot, maybe something's toxic in the air, maybe there are chemicals in the water, things like that. Those are the animals that are going to be affected first. So indicator species like frogs, toads, salamanders, all kinds of amphibians like that, and other species too. Even birds are indicator species because they're very sensitive, like we talked about, to airborne properties. They can let us know ahead of time before something happens to us. And that sounds selfish, but it's honestly important for all sorts of other animals. Let's meet another reptile, or I guess our first reptile, actually. Another cold-blooded animal is what I meant to say. But not just amphibians, but reptiles become affected, of course, by these cold weather issues or power issues. So even in general, if you lose power as a reptile keeper, that is a big deal, because reptiles need power to be able to have their ultraviolet light, their heat lights or heat pads or whatever you have. And if that is off for a long period of time, they can slowly, kind of start suffering from that. So it's really important to have a backup plan. If it's just for a day or two, they're going to be fine. To be honest with you, as long as the temperature is not too low, they're okay without their lamps for a couple of days, as long as your house is warm. But if your house begins to get very cold, that's going to be very scary, and they can become affected very quickly by those temperatures. So again, we have all of our travel enclosures, which are basically tubs and bins for our reptiles. That's the safest way to transport them. They've all got some kind of substrate on the bottom of that, whether it be actual substrate like mulch or hay. We've also got some that are on paper towels, some that are on blankets, but everybody's got something to snuggle up on and to be insulated in. And like I said, we would literally move them to the cars if we had to in this crazy temperature. So let's meet our first reptile, and it's our second cold-blooded critter. And she hasn't been, well, he or she, we don't really know the gender of this animal. He or she hasn't been on here in a little while. This is BT, the blue-tongue skink lizard. This is a lizard that we found in Australia. So another animal that would not be well equipped to deal with cold weather issues like snow. Australia is another type of continent where in general, it doesn't really get cold. They just have two seasons, the wet and the dry season. Very similar to our situation with the African bullfrog, right? BT is so very cute. This is BT, stands for blue tongue. I'm going to make sure we're in focus here. BT, you're the most important part, so let's make sure you're in focus. There we go. I have a little bit of a focus issue today, but that's okay. It looks really cool now. So BT is a type of lizard that kind of looks like a snake, right? He or she is not a snake. They do have very small legs, so they can mimic snakes easily by hiding their little stubby legs in the grass or the substrate where they live, and that will help them to mimic snakes and hopefully avoid predators. But this animal, again, if they experience some kind of cooler temperatures in Australia, I almost said Africa, in Australia, they would burmate as well. So they would go under the ground, burrow for a little while, and hopefully not too long of a time, they would come back out once it got warmer again and whatnot. This is definitely not a climbing animal, so burrowing is definitely an option for them. They can dig pretty well. They can burrow with their little shovel nose, and their legs are more for scooting along the ground. They're not really a great runner, and they're definitely not a great climber. They don't climb trees or anything at all. They might be able to get up onto a rock or something like that, and that's about it. This animal would want to regulate its temperature by getting onto a rock sometimes, but most of the time this animal would either be kind of covered by substrate of some sort or grass to be able to hide from predators. And their main predators in Australia are going to be birds of prey. So hawks and eagles and animals like that, owls too, if they see them. These guys are mostly diurnal though, so they wouldn't really see a ton of owls unless owls are just up during the day for some reason. There are some owls that are sometimes, but birds of prey are definitely their main predators. They also have animals like dingoes and even feral cats that they have to watch out for. So for those animals, they do mimic the snake, and they do hide sometimes, like I said. Another defense mechanism that BT would have is going to be losing the tail. So some lizards can actually drop their tails at certain points and then regrow their tails afterwards. And the tail dropping is going to give them a little bit of a defense, of course, because it's going to give that predator something to eat where the whole animal will get away afterwards. And then it grows back after several months. It doesn't grow back instantly or anything like that. It's not that easy. And it's definitely not something they would want to do unless they had to, but it's a great kind of last ditch effort to be able to survive if they absolutely need to. So if this animal got grabbed by the tail and then the tail popped off, well, the whole animal could get away. The tail would keep on wiggling even though it's amputated from the body. It would still have nerves firing, and that animal that's trying to eat the skink would be stimulated to eat the tail only, and then the skink could get away and see another day, right? So it is not a tegu, Viviana. This is a blue-tongued skink lizard. Skinks are a type of lizard, kind of like a tegu. There are many, many different types of lizards, of course, like geckos and tegus and iguanas and skinks. And there's so many different ones. Skinks are just one type of category. We have skinks right here in the United States as well. I bet you didn't know that, those of you watching. Skinks are all sorts of different sizes. This is one of the larger types of skinks. And by the way, BT, this individual, is not as big as they get. They get about 2 to 3 times as big as what you see here. So that is a pretty big lizard overall. You can see the entire size here if I back up a little bit, even though I'm blurry. There we go. But skinks do exist all over the place, including in the United States. They're just smaller here in the US where I live. And they oftentimes will burrow underneath the leaf litter, underneath the grass, like we said before, just like this animal does too. So a lot of times you won't see them. A lot of people have also seen legless lizards. If you didn't know what that is, it's a type of skink with no legs. So there are different types of lizards, of course, and even legless lizards. And sometimes people call them glass lizards because of the ability to be able to lose their tail, almost like breaking off like glass. And then they can regrow the tail. Isn't that handy? But these guys are very, very terrestrial. I mean, that they only hang out on the ground. Last week we talked about arboreal animals, which hang out in the trees. Today we are meeting all terrestrial animals, and I didn't even do that on purpose. And of course, the frog is also partially aquatic. So aquatic and terrestrial today. This animal is definitely suited for ground-dwelling life. The belly would literally just kind of scoot along the ground, and they're very snake-like, and that is the idea. These guys look like a snake, and they even look like a viper with their triangular-shaped head. And this animal even has a pattern which is similar to a viper in Australia called the death adder. The death adder is a very, very, very dangerous type of viper that can give a venomous bite, of course. This animal is non-venomous, so no worries there. But it mimics that animal, pretends to look like them. And from above, especially because remember, this animal is sometimes eaten by birds of prey. From above is especially important to look like something scary, like a viper. So they do have a similar pattern, even size, and their tongue is bluish black, just like the death adder as well. Now, if they were a snake like the adder, they would have a forked tongue. This animal does not have a forked tongue, and even tegu lizards have forked tongues. So not every lizard tongue is the same. This animal has more of a fleshy tongue, just like a human. They don't have a fork on the end of their tongue, but it is bluish black. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, like I said, it mimics the color of the viper that they mimic. Another one is going to be just the blue color in general can serve as a warning in of itself. So if that animal cannot convince its predator that it looks like a snake enough, and that predator comes forward anyway and tries to eat them, and maybe the tail tactic doesn't work out, they can actually face their enemies and open their mouth really wide, stick out their tongue really, really far, and that tongue is quite blue and quite strange looking. And the inside of their mouth has a contrasting kind of reddish pinkish color. So those bright colors will oftentimes scare away enemies as well. Those enemies that can see color, that is. Not every animal can see color like that, but the birds especially can. So sometimes that color flash will scare away enemies too. So bright colors in nature oftentimes mean danger or poison. So that can help them too. Yes, that is exactly how you spell skink. It's like skunk, but replace the letter U with the letter I. Skink. So this is a type of skink called the Bluetongue skink. The largest skink in the world is called the prehensile-tailed skink, or the monkey skink. That is actually a arboreal type skink, but this is a terrestrial skink. And they are also one of the largest, not as large as the prehensile tail. Prehensile tails live in Australasia. These guys live in Australasia as well, but mostly on the mainland of Australia. However, BT's subspecies is the Indonesian. So guess where they live? Indonesia. So in Australasia as well. But that is what region of the earth those and this type of skink are from. Aren't they neat? Skinks do have ears on the side of their head there. I always look at the ears. They're great big giant holes on the side of their head. I do have two of them, one on each side. They have great vision as well. They have blinking eyelids and nostrils for breathing and sniffing. And they can also smell with their tongue too, just like a snake does, but not quite as well as a snake or a tegu or a monitor lizard would, because those animals have forked tongues. And the reason that those animals have forked tongues is because they smell directionally with the 2 points of their tongue, which I don't have either. However, this type of skink, this type of lizard, even though they don't have a forked tongue, can still smell with the tongue. They can pick up scent particles with the tongue, bring them back into their mouth, and rub the roof of their mouth with the tongue. And there on the roof of their mouth, they actually have a pocket called a Jacobson's organ. And that organ will actually tell them direct information to their brain about those smells that they're experiencing from particles on their tongue. So technically, they do smell with the tongue, and they also smell with their nostrils and breathe with their nostrils, and they do taste as well. So they got all 5 senses. And of course, they have a sense of touch. BT can feel me touching him or her. Now, I keep saying him or her because we don't know the gender. With blue-tongued skinks and skinks, a lot of skinks, it's hard to tell their gender just by looking at them. They are definitely a monomorphic animal, not dimorphic. Dimorphic means that they would look different between male and female. A great example of dimorphism is a peacock. Peacock males, of course, are the peacock. They look like a big, beautiful tail and all the pretty bright colors, and they're a lot larger. They have a blue chest and neck and head. Peahens are the female version of the peacock, right? They're brown. They have a small tail, all the above. You guys are probably familiar with that. Roosters and hens are another really good example as well of dimorphism. But blue-tongued skinks, unfortunately, are monomorphic, but there's no big deal for us to know the gender of this animal, so we may never know. But BT stands for blue tongue, works for either gender, doesn't it? So we really don't know. But yes, you are right on how to spell. So again, another cold-blooded type animal or ectothermic animal with no body temperature of their own that would definitely need to be moved in the event of a disaster like the power outage in the middle of a snowstorm. So this animal would also be included in that evacuation, if you will. And that's one way that we prepared to move our reptiles if we need to. Well, BT, you did a great job. By the way, this is an omnivore type animal. The frog that we met earlier, Frances, she's a carnivore. So she would eat all kinds of different bugs, maybe rodents, and even birds and fish, all kinds of things in the wild. And here at Once in a Wild, we offer her all kinds of bugs as well as rodents, mostly to eat. And when I say bugs, that includes worms as well as crickets and roaches, all kinds of variety of food. A variety is very, very good for them, as it is with most of us. And this animal too, they are omnivores. So these guys aren't just carnivores eating bugs and other animals and eggs and things. They also eat fruits. They're big consumers of fruits as well as some vegetation as well. Well, BT, you did a great job. We'll go ahead and proceed to our final animal, another cold-blooded critter. But BT is beautiful as always. And don't you worry, all of our animals are going to be taken care of in the event that we do join our fellow Texans in losing power. We haven't yet, and so we're very, very happy for that. Those of you that are concerned about our animals and us here at Once in a While, we're doing okay, and we're a little bit, what's the word? Confused. Why us? Why didn't we lose power? I don't know, but I'm sure happy that it hasn't happened yet, and hopefully continues until the weekend when the weather gets warmer again. So that is the forecast so far. Today, temperatures are not too low today and tonight. And then tomorrow, we're back to cold temperatures again and some more snow. And then Friday, Saturday is supposed to be warm again, or warmer at least, where everything would melt. And hopefully we get power back on. So be thinking about us in Texas. If you're not from Texas and you're watching, hello! Texas is experiencing some extreme cold weather that is causing a lot of power outages, as well as water to be stopped and not working, and internet to be not working, which is the least of those problems. But still, it's an issue for work and for everything else. And a lot of us are trapped because we cannot drive on the road because Texas does not really salt their roads or make any provisions for that. So a lot of us are actually trapped in our homes, which if it wasn't bad enough already, being trapped for quarantine purposes with the COVID situation, now we're really trapped for a few days at least in our homes due to the weather. So please be thinking of us. And we're all just hoping that we can make it through to the weekend and we'll be okay. For those of you that are experiencing some tough times right now, our heart goes out to you, and I hope this can bring a little bit of positivity to you. We went ahead and decided to go ahead and proceed with our show tonight. That way we could let you guys know that it's going to be okay. If you need anything, reach out to us in some way, shape, or form. We can give you advice. We can help out in any way that we can. We don't have a ton of provisions either, but we're doing our very best. And we do have, like I said, power and water and internet here. So let us know if you need anything and we can try to help you out. And we're at least here for your moral support. So let us know. All right, let's move on to our final animal. And it's my favorite of all of our reptiles that we have. Did you know that I have favorites here Once in a While? It's kind of hard to have favorites among your animals because they're kind of like your children. But it's hard not to love this guy coming up next. Here he comes. Yeah, it's going to be a snake. Of course, you guys know I love snakes. I love all animals, but snakes are actually my favorite animals. And a close second is actually birds. But we're talking about cold-blooded animals today. Not that birds aren't important, and all your animals, including cats and dogs and birds and all kinds of animals, need provisions for cold weather. So also our hedgehogs are another one I thought about bringing on the show today, but I wanted to keep it a little bit simple, to be honest with you, because it's been a rough week for sure. But however, hedgehogs cannot handle cold weather at all. So they're almost a reptile, even though they're a mammal. They would have to definitely be moved as well if the temperatures drop. Anyway, so this is Slytherin, the California king snake. Now, Slytherin is not really a tropical species. They're from California, and they're from surrounding states around California, so they can definitely experience some cooler weathers. However, a snowstorm would not be great for these guys, and it would definitely potentially make him sick. So we wouldn't want to risk that, even though he's not a tropical species and could maybe handle cooler weather into the 60s and 50s, possibly. We wouldn't make him go through that. So if something happened here and we didn't have any heat in the house, or the lights went out and we had nothing, we would move him to the vehicles as well. So he would be moved to the car too. So he's got his travel enclosure ready to go as well. And if we have to move him, so be it. And we will handle that by doing that. But Slytherin is one of our favorites. He is absolutely beautiful. This type of snake has an unusual banded pattern, which is not really a common pattern to see in nature, right? So if you see a pattern like this, a lot of animals will see a pattern such as this and think poison, danger, stay away. stop, think about it before you eat it. And that is his tactic to stay safe from his enemy. It's just like the Bluetongue skink has its own tactic to stay safe from his or her enemy by looking like a snake. What a great segue. This guy would use the tactic of having a strange pattern. So a lot of times animals like coral snakes, or even fish like lionfish, or mammals like porcupines have black and white bands on them because it makes their potential enemies and predators stop and think about before maybe eating them or going after them. In this case, though, it's all bluff. It's just a mimicry tactic, just kind of like the skink too, now that I think about it. He doesn't have any poison or venom or anything dangerous whatsoever, unless you're a smaller animal than him, and then you might be his potential food, because this is definitely a carnivore. All snakes are carnivores. They don't eat salad or fruits and vegetables, so he would have to consume other animals to survive. This type of snake is known as the king snake because they do actually eat other snakes. That's where that term comes from, the king snake, king of snakes. So yes, this is Slytherin. So Slytherin is spelled just like that, but without the E at the end. And it's just like the house from Hogwarts, from Harry Potter, right? He actually came with that name, so I can't take credit for that, but we kept the name because we absolutely love Harry Potter here once in a while. At least I do, and my house is House Slytherin, so how appropriate. But he's wonderful. He's my absolute favorite of all our snakes, and my favorite reptile that we have, to each his own. But he is just a joy to work with, and a very gentle king snake. A lot of king snakes are a little bit, maybe a little sassy, if you will, because they do have that prey drive or food drive to eat almost anything that they come across in nature. So they eat other snakes, they eat lizards, they eat fish, they eat eggs, they eat rodents and birds, almost anything they can come across, like frogs. So we definitely keep him away from any other animal that we have here once in a while. However, he is super gentle and safe to be around if you are a human. So he's a wonderful animal to bring out for presentations and for people to be around and experience, because he is such a great animal ambassador for sure. But again, he would be an animal that wouldn't really be able to endure very, very, very cold temperatures like this. I think where they're from in California and surrounding states, it doesn't really snow like this. I could be wrong. You guys tell me out there if you're from those states and whatnot. California is not really experiencing a snowstorm right now. It's other areas right now. However, he could probably survive if he really needed to, but it wouldn't be good for his body to endure that cold of a temperature. So we wouldn't make him go through that. Again, we have to make sure our animals have water. So we have water. We got to make sure we have a plan in case we have to evacuate our animals for any disaster, whether it be a flood, a fire, or in this case, power outages, if that does happen. And in cold weather, that's not great. Now, if we had a power outage in the middle of the spring, summer, or fall, we'd be fine. We would just wait for the power to come back on within a reason, right? Everything is kind of a unique situation to its own. But this is a very, very specialized situation because if the power goes out, that's our heat source. You know what I mean? Most houses are reliant on, electricity to cool or warm your environment in your house. Most houses aren't designed where you just put the fireplace on and it heats the whole house. It might heat the area in your living room, but that's about it. So we are definitely being careful. Don't you worry about us. I hope you guys are safe and sound and doing okay so far. Please, please, please be careful, because tomorrow here in Texas, we are going to experience cold weather again, especially if you're in North Texas. Please be very careful. Please have a plan in place. If you haven't lost power yet, you want to make sure to be prepared and make sure that you have somewhere to go, something to do. A great tip, like I said before, like we're going to do, is if you have reptiles or even birds or little children, your car is probably a good solution. If you don't have a car, make sure and knock on your neighbor's door or get a hold of somebody if you have your phone service to see if you can either go to somebody's house that has some kind of heat source or be able to go into your car. And when you're in your car using the heat, make sure you have gas first. If you can get to the gas station and fill up, great. Make sure to crack your windows a little bit so you don't experience too much fumes when you're sitting there still in the car. Maybe you can drive around in a circle for a little bit in your neighborhood if it's safe conditions, but you always want to make sure that the fumes aren't getting too strong for your animals and yourself. So please, please, please reach out to Once in a Wild. Our number is down below. Our website is down below if you need any advice. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us here on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube so you can keep track of what's going on with us, right? And stay tuned for more cold weather updates, I suppose. And Slytherin, you did a great job. Francis did a great job, and BT did a great job. I hope you guys are safe. I really, really do. And I'm worried about all you guys. So please keep us updated if you can. I totally understand if you're not able to watch right now because your power might be out and your internet might be out, etc. And you've got more things to worry about than watching Once in a Wild. But we did want to make sure and be on today to make sure that you guys have something to look forward to watch maybe, or need advice about your cold weather provisions for your animals. Please make sure you are not leaving your pets outside unless they are ducks or something like that can definitely handle. If you can bring them inside, do that. But dogs and cats and everything else should be brought inside at this point. It is way too cold for all those animals to be comfortable outside for long periods of time. We know that animals have to go out and use the restroom and things like that. But please be careful. Please make sure that you are safe, your children are safe. And I wish the best for everybody, and I hope to see you guys next time here at Once in a Wild. You guys stay safe out there. We are nothing close to ordinary, but we love to be your friend. Hold our hands and let's have fun together, singing as loud as you can. Everybody singing Once in a Wild. Together. Once in a Wild. I want to hear you say okay, everybody, stay safe, stay warm, and I hope everything goes well for you. And we're gonna make through this, guys. We'll be here for you guys if you need anything. Okay, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.